All right, what's going on, guys? How's everyone doing? I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning, or if you're going to catch us replay, awesome. Make sure you comment below that you are replaying this amazing conversation. Listen, I'm not going to talk too much because today's conversation is important. And so I want to make sure that we jump right into it. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to share who you are, what we are doing here, as I take a few seconds to share on our social media platforms. Tony, why don't you go first?
Yeah. Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Tony Villafane. I am the pastor of students and leadership development at Gateway Church in Parkesburg, Pennsylvania. I've been there for just 2.5 years now. I oversee 5th through 12th grade. I have a huge heart for just pastoring and shepherding teenagers, discipling them, being Jesus to them, while also knowing that students have the capacity to be leaders and to be influencers in the next generation. And so really just taking things within my student ministry platform as a leadership development ground for our students. I oversee a podcast called The Influence Experiment. That's a monthly podcast around how to build the art and science of influential capacity. And as we get the chance to hang out with Mr. David Eaton around Axis, I'm a huge obsessive Axis fan, and so you'll hear more about what Axis is. But man, I am probably I could beat someone out for being the #1 fan of Axis. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
And hey, everybody, I'm David. I'm the president and a co-founder at Axis. And yeah, so excited to be on. Axis exists to connect parents, teens, and Jesus in a disconnected world. And really, the team that I'm a part of that has about 24 people on it, we are your research assistants. And we're there to help get parents back in the game and just kind of research for you all the time, so that if you have a parent who comes up and wants to talk to you about vaping, or wants to talk to you about LGBTQ, or wants to talk to you about TikTok, that you have a great resource to de-escalate them, but also help them disciple the heart of their kid.
This is awesome. This is so good stuff. David, thank you so much for being here with us. Tony, thank you so much. I'm going to open up in prayer and we're going to jump right into it. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's get it. Father, we thank you so much for your goodness, your mercy, and your grace. We thank you for community. We thank you for the heart and the passion that you place in us to really go all in and to do all that we can and leave the rest to you. I thank you for David. I thank you for Tony. I pray that this conversation again would be stamped in time, and that this conversation would be a resource and a fresh wind under the sails of parents and all the leaders that are connected to our networks. We love you. We thank you in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Well, this is what we're going to do this morning. I am going to share a little bit about Axis and really how to build trust between parents and their kids, the church community and kids, and to get resources in your hands. And then Tony and I are going to have a discussion. And so that's kind of the framework there. I'll give you some of our best content. And here we go. I'm going to just go ahead over here and share my screen. 3, 2, 1, do it. And the fun part about this is that I'm actually going to interview Jonathan and Tony in the process of this. So get ready, fellas.
Right.
You are not safe.
On the spot. All right.
Just a few questions. I want to see how you respond under pressure. I know you can handle it. Okay, Axis at the intersection of parents, teens, and Jesus. And what's great is that all of us are here because we love the next generation. And so whether we have kids ourselves who are part of the next generation, whether we got some OG like youth pastors here who've got grandkids, and really just the kids in our youth group, that we get to join parents and the church community in discipling their kids. So the fastest way to a person's heart is through their kids. And so we're going to talk about your heart as well. Axis, last year we served about 585,000 unique families through a lot of different things. But right now we're at about 400,000 families and churches, about 730 churches and networks as well each month, that we wake up, the team comes into the office, and we think, how can we make your life easier? And how can we be your assistant in reaching the next generation? And just some interesting thoughts going into this is like, man, families feel quarantined right now, even though some of the bans are lifting up. And 72% of them, and when we asked them, they said they actually feel closer as a family. Doesn't mean their life's easier. Doesn't mean their life's better. It just means they feel closer as a family because of the quarantine, but they hate their screens. I mean, they hate them. They feel so quarantined. And we hear this phrase a lot. We have a lot of parents who just say, I'm tired of losing. And, or the phrase, I just feel desperate. And that's the place we get to enter into. But why do they feel that way? It's because like 46% increase in video game usage. And then, of course, nothing has really changed here, but the average age to get a smartphone is 10.3 years old, and to get social media is 11.4. And I think that the smartphone is bigger than the driver's license, bigger than learning how to drive. And I think it's almost as big as puberty as far as a life transition and what you have access to. All right, so here's my question. And by the way, if you're on the chat, that's great too. I see someone hopped on there. So love to have your thoughts on this, but also fellas, here's the question for you. Here's the story. You find a box in your kid's closet. What do you do? Let me tell you the bigger story to this. Okay. So you already know where I'm going. Okay. So you're, let's say you have a 17-year-old son, like my friend from South Carolina has, and he was looking for something innocently in his son's room. Innocently, he wasn't snooping, he was like just being a dad, couldn't find it. So he looks in his son's closet, he sees a box. So he reaches down, picks up the box, he opens the box, and inside the box he finds a half-consumed bottle of whiskey and an open box of condoms. So let's say you find this in your kid's closet. What are you gonna do? Tell me.
Tony, I'll let you go first.
Well, let's say, what, I think it'd be more like, what is he, rather than asking, what am I going to take away? It's more like, what is he going to be able to keep after I'm done with him? With everything that I would ground him for or something like that. But freaking out, man, like, it'd be like shock of like, no, like, not my kid. Like, like, not poor Billy. I don't think I named my kid Billy, but like I would know, like, and there'd be like this, like, just shock of disbelief. That'd be the first thing, and then I would think about, okay, everything I'm going to be wanting to take away from him.
Yeah, so I have a 10-year-old. She'll be 10 in July, and
Right
so
on.
I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a dad who soon will have a teenager. I would have to take a few seconds for myself, right? I would probably take a walk. Breathe before engaging at all, because I probably would be upset. I would be upset at myself, upset at the situation. But we're definitely conversating. We're definitely talking about this for sure, right? Yep. So that would be my initial thing. Step away, then connect with my child. Yeah, and obviously get my wife involved. I got to get my wife involved for sure. Yep. So.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's really the question of what do you do when you come across something that freaks you out, right? And all the feelings that you have to process. And by the way, if I see there's a few people in the chat right now, man, if you have an idea, an answer, I want to know it, because this is a conversation. I'm not just here to just talk about stuff. So it's a true story. This happened, and it's been a fun question to ask because I've heard so many parents say, you wouldn't believe what I found in my son's glove compartment, or we had the plumber come over to fix the sink, and this guy's reaching behind the sink and pulls out a bottle of vodka from my daughter's sink, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I think the point with this is, and some people have said, yeah, I just drank the other half of the bottle of vodka or the bottle of bourbon before I talk to my kid, or I'd go for a walk, or I'd pray through it, or I'd cry, or I'd scream at them. And so here's kind of the big idea, is that whenever we come across something that freaks us out, two options are very much presented to us. One is to just be silent and just be like, I'm out. Like, I'm tired of losing. I feel desperate. Like, I did my best. I turned out all right. They're a good kid, and just kind of let it go. Or to be like, no, give me your phone. Give me your keys. Give me your, like, I'm going to shut down all your relationships, or we're going to go to war over this, because you're really fighting for their future in some level. But I just want you to know that Axis thinks there's a third way besides silent or violent. I'll get to that here in a minute. But I'll show you a couple of other options for silent and violent. So one for silent is like the mom who says, hey, we're just trying to raise our kids like it's the 1950s. So I was at an event. We were talking about culture, and this mom was so mad because we had spoken to their kids earlier, a big group of kids earlier. And she was so mad that we had used like current cultural references. And so this mother bear just comes charging to the wall, right, and says, we're trying to raise our kids like the 1950s. It's like, God has given you your kid like 71 years later. We have to raise our kids for that world, not a world that used to exist. And you know what? It wasn't that great back then anyways. We've been talking about that as a culture, I think, recently. And then the violent side is like, if you can't afford counseling or therapy, you can always go look at, Google parents destroying kids' phones on YouTube. I've turned the volume down on this, but this is a very unhappy mom with her kid's iPhone right there.
No.
Oh, dang. Yes. Oh, no.
Wow.
There goes $1,000. Boom.
And I just love like the eye contact she makes right here at the end of it.
She ain't messing around.
Yeah. So and then the idea of like the box in the closet. Look, it's not the box in the closet anymore. It's the box in our pockets. Like the smartphone is the new box. Excellent. And what's inside the smartphone is Gen Z. And so it's not just something that's behind a sink or in a glove compartment or in a closet. Like it's with us all the time. And so again, like Access's job, we're here to be your research assistant, and we're also here to help parents get back in the game, discipling their kids. This is a dad from Washington State. He says, I always feel 3 steps behind my kids, though. And so that's another thing is like, again, as youth pastors, I'm a bivocational youth pastor, is like always to invite parents back into this, to invite grandparents back into the thing. Because if you always feel 3 steps behind your kid, if you're like just starting to like get on Insta for the first time as a parent, and your kid's like up in Clubhouse now and already through TikTok or still doing that, then it's easy for this story to be true. We had a young lady say to us, she says, I've only had one real conversation with my dad. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, I've only had one real conversation with my dad. It's like, if you only had one real conversation with your dad and you're having thousands of conversations a week on your smartphone, there's just gonna be so much that's lost in translation. Yep. So here, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna share a little bit about the story of Access, some of the resources that can help, and I'll tie this story up, and then we're gonna have a conversation. Tony's prepped some great questions. So I started Access 15 years ago with my buddy Jeremiah. Our mission is to build lifelong faith by helping parents talk with their kids about what they otherwise wouldn't. And one of the things that's been huge for me, Tony and Jonathan, is I went on a mission trip when I was in high school. And it's the first time that I really served other people, and just it kind of opened my mind. And so here we were preaching the gospel on the street corner, which is kind of crazy, but this is back in the day. And here are 3 of my buddies, all with Bibles in their hands. And they're preaching the gospel in the corner. And this is when I stopped renting my faith from my parents and started owning it for myself. All 3 of these guys doing amazing things around the world. All 3 of these guys are now atheists. All 3 of these guys have walked away from the church, have walked away from Jesus and said, nope, it's not true. I don't believe this anymore. I'm out. And the current scary stat is that 42 million Christian teens will leave Christianity by 2050 if nothing changes. And at Access, we believe the greatest intervention to stopping this is caring adults, parents, grandparents, youth pastors, teachers, coaches who are discipling the next generation.
Yeah, that's right.
And understanding what's going on in their world. And Tim Keller said this, I wish there were hundreds of groups like Access. We're losing the next generation. We need help from people like Access to reach teenagers. So that was a good day to have one of our book heroes say that. Okay, so what we aspire to be best at is what we call culture translation. So just imagine if C.S. Lewis and MTV, if they made a baby, they would name their baby Access.
Good looking baby.
Or C.S. Lewis and TikTok, or just insert your favorite meme, maybe C.S. Lewis and Baby Yoda, whatever it takes. And then
yes.
And then we used to think that we were missionaries to the next generation at Access, and we were wrong. Parents are the missionaries, grandparents are the missionaries, youth pastors are the missionaries. Access is just your back office research assistant. And so at the intersection of parents, teens, and Jesus, our calling is to connect the wisdom of parents with the wonder of their kids, the wisdom of the church with the wonder of the next generation of the church. And when the world says, here are your 2 options, you either have to be silent and just give up or scream at your kid, we say, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be awesome to be confident? To be silent or violent, but confident, to be ready to engage. And when you open that box, because we'll find a box somewhere, or you're searching in your kid, you just kind of stumble across your kid's search on the internet, right? Their history. And there's going to be chances where it's like, gosh, I just want to tap out. I just want to quit. But no, it's to get in there and to open the box. So here are our resources for you. We think about these 4 different things: trends, topics, teachers, and themes. Trends, we have something called the Culture Translator. This is completely free. comes out every single Friday, has over 60,000 people on it. It says, here are 3 things that are going on this week in your kid's life and how to have non-anxious conversations about it. Then we have paid resources, and I'm going to give you a coupon for 50% off at the end of this.
Oh,
but
swing it this way. Swing it this way, David.
Well, so it's if you just put in, I thought this is kind of like a round table, so just put in like a round table 50, so 50% off. So round table 50, no spaces. Use that coupon code for church. I think for like a small church, it's $250 a year total. So we're dropping that in half. For a larger church, it just depends on how big it is. But you can just print. So here, like, check this out. So this is like the youth pastor's best friend is our parent guides. Every month we create a new parent guide. We have over 100 of these. And so just imagine, you were talking about, Jonathan, you're talking about a family comes into your office and like they're, facing something with their kid. And like all of a sudden, like they decided to meet with you. They decided to come in and meet with you face to face. Like this is serious. They're feeling the urge to be silent or the urge to be violent with their kid. And so you can say, okay, this is what you're facing with your kid. Here's the information you need. Give them one of these parent guides. Text them one of these parent guides. Print off one of these parent guides. Print them off and put them on the wall if you want to. And then you start pastoring them, saying, how do you respond? Are you inviting the Holy Spirit in this conversation? And so you get to be there instead of saying, oh my gosh, I have to go figure out, the right information in this area. You'd be like, boom, here you go. We're going to help you have the right information, but now it's time to
good.
And then,
so good. Excellent.
And then for teachers, the other T, we've just interviewed over 200 experts from the issues of technology to LGBTQ to spiritual doubts. And then finally, this is my favorite resource. I use these every other month as a bivocational youth pastor. They are video conversation kits. They're 45 minutes long. They're in 4 parts. So one month we will do a book study. And the next month we'll do like, hey, we're going to do 4 weeks on anxiety. And I'm telling you, these will make you more uncomfortable as the youth pastor than they'll make your kids. So they're designed for your students that will get them talking, it'll get them engaged. Not heavy-handed. It's very nuanced theologically, though, and you're going to love it. And so these are really, and I'm telling you, if you're like, have 3 little kids like I do, and it's Saturday night, and you're like, oh, man. Or maybe you have a bunch of volunteers, and you're like, I just got to get they're not ready for that. Like, I want to get the right things for my volunteers. Super strong. So again, here's the final question. I have a final story, and then we'll do some discussion. So, all right, Jonathan. All right, Tony. All right, anybody who else is listening in on this? True or false? I had a high school student say this to me. True or false? The stricter the parent, the sneakier the teenager.
That's tough. That's tough to answer. I'll let you go first, Tony. You got it.
Yeah, no. I would like knee-jerk reaction would say true. Because I don't know, just the idea like the more that you try to put like these like restriction, I mean the word helicopter parent can get thrown around, but like the more you have these like this restrictions and these walls, these confines, like it just makes them want to break out of it all the more. Like that was me like when I was a teenager. Like that's what I wanted to do. And so yeah, that's kind of where my knee-jerk reaction goes to.
Man, I'm gonna say false.
All right.
I'm gonna say false because I feel like being strict is a good thing, right? I mean, at least we're giving them. So here's the thing: my parents got divorced at an early age, right? So I didn't have a model or a template of, hey, here's what's right, what's wrong. I kind of figured it out along the way. And I made a lot of mistakes. And so I feel like if I would have had that, it would have been awesome to have that. So I'm going to say false.
That's good.
Well, when this young lady in my youth group said this to me, I didn't have an answer. And I agree with both of you. I think the answer is true and false. But as I started, so what I started doing is just started asking people this question because it's a really fun question and it usually gets them to talk about their childhood and their high school years and et cetera. But I asked this Grandpa Bob, and I said, hey, strict to the parent, the sneakier the teenager. What do you think? True or false? And he answered my question with a question. That's how you know he was on the right track. So it's like, oh, he just went Jesus on me. So he said this. He said, David, are you raising a sin concealer or are you raising a sin confessor?
Ooh.
Oh, bang, bang.
Wow, that'll preach.
So
Grandpa Bob, he brought it in. He brought it.
Yeah, he kind of landed the plane on the heart of the issue. So with all of the things that are happening, what you need is, and what is assumed by stricter, sneakier, stricter, that dichotomy is that you are adversaries. You are on different teams and you're competing and fighting with your kids. Instead of saying, we're on the same team, we're in this together. I am your chief advocate. I'm here to help you be successful. I'm here to help you know the way, truth, and life. And one way to translate with all this is to tell your kid often, you can tell me anything. And so if you're a youth pastor, say, hey, you can tell me anything. If you're a parent or grandparent, say, you can tell me anything. And they need to hear that over and over again. And then one of these days, they might actually tell you something. And then you have to practice your I'm not shocked face and be like, absorb it and go forward and try to find the wise path. And yeah, maybe some trends, topics, or teachers and themes can help you along the way. But really, the heart of it all is trust. So you're building that trust. Because look, here's the deal. If and when you find a box in your kid's closet, what do you do? What do you do? Well, as I've been reflecting on this true story that's kind of like a parable for the smartphone, this is really important, okay? And it's not intuitive. You have to care as much about the box as what is in it. Let me explain that. So what's inside the box is this scary stuff. It's the perfectionism. It's the anxiety. It's the cutting. It's the pornography. It's the half-consumed bottle of whiskey and the open box of condoms. Whatever's inside the box, it will kill your body, for sure. But the box will kill your soul. The box represents secrecy. The box represents shame. The box represents I have to hide from God. I have to hide from my parents. I have to hide from my church. I have to hide from my good friends. And it's a fig leaf in many ways. So again, whenever we're opening the box, care as much about that as what's inside of it. Because really, what is our 500-year plan? We're all dead. Our great grandbabies are dead. You're 10-year-old, my 8-year-old, Jonathan. The future, the next few generations will be gone. But have we passed on the faith to the next generation, or is it just lost in translation? Or as I said earlier, the young lady said she's only had one real conversation with her dad. How sad is that? Well, it just turns out that her dad is a pastor, and her dad is a Christian university president for 20 years. And her dad is also on the Access board. It's like, oh no, ouch. One of my heroes, really. But the story gets awesome because she says this and then she smiles. I've only had one real conversation with my dad, and she smiles. I'm like, what's going on? So then she says it again. She says, I've only had one real conversation with my dad, and we've never stopped having that one conversation. And so for me, that's parents are going to have a 60-year conversation with their kids. Grandparents are going to have a 30-year conversation with their kids. All of us youth pastors out there, we'll have like a 4-year or a 3-year or a 6-year conversation with these kids. We don't have to solve everything overnight. We don't have to have all the right answers all the time, but we're going to be there in a Deuteronomy 6 relationship as you walk, lay down, rise, as you're going through final exams and winning state championships or losing or getting broken up with or struggling over what your gender identity is or asking tough questions about, how should I interact on social media? What do I do when I feel left out? You're going to have that one conversation with this kid. And that parent's definitely going to have one conversation that lasts a lifetime. And then as youth pastors, we're going to have that 4 or 5-year conversation supporting that. So that's the big idea behind Access. That's what's going on. We have the Culture Translator, which is free. If you're looking at getting this Roundtable 50 for the 50% off, reach out to Kelly at access.org. Her job is to make you successful and get you integrated. Because the thing about a church is that you can just share all of our resources with all of your families if you want to. Or you can use them whenever someone comes to you and be like, boom, here you go. This is something. Or you can have like a proactive plan that says, hey, this is the mental health month here at our church. And I also have we just created new content on pornography. And so if you go there as well, free-porn-CK, CK stands for conversation kit. If you wanted that, we're just open-handed here. So that's the big heart of Access. I love what you youth pastors are doing. But look, parents are going to try to resource, or they're going to try to like outsource their parenting to you. And sometimes that has to happen because some of these kids don't have parents, right? Or their parents are bad influences on their life, or the parents drop their kids off. But the more that you can resource parents and resource that essential relationship, the more impact all of us will have. Yep. All right, fellas, let's talk.
Yeah.
David, excellent job, man. That was dope. That was super dope.
Yeah, and as a kind of like a shameless plug, right, for Access, like I am, as I said at the very beginning, like I'm just such a advocate for Access myself. I have loved what I've been able to learn from them myself. I actually have a really unique relationship with Access, where I was way back in the day. Access did traveling teams, and Access came to my high school when I was a sophomore in high school, I think it was, and I got to listen to this like 2-day conference by Access. And now I'm a youth pastor using Access's resources. And so just an incredible organization. I get to be a recipient of as a student, seeing how they brought the gospel in relevant cultural moments and how we can redeem culture. That's a big thing, that like this idea of like, it's not just throwing away culture. It's not just kind of stepping into culture and being just like it, but how can we redeem culture well? And I think Access does a phenomenal job with that, utilizing their parent guides, utilizing their, I've used their conversation kits already with some of my student leaders. They're phenomenal. And so for sure. But Dave, as we kind of talk a little bit about trusting, building trust with Gen Z, generally speaking, would you say that like Gen Z, how trusting are they? What kind of generation are they? Are they more like a skeptical generation? Are they like no, like we trust everyone with what they say? Like kind of what's the vibe of what is Gen Z in their trust gauge, if you will?
That's a great question. So one thing that's interesting is that Gen Z has more in common with their grandparents than their parents. So Gen Z and the grandparents are both children of recessions. Where grandparents might have been at some Vietnam, either in Vietnam or at Vietnam protest. Same thing, our Gen Z kids are participating in protest for some of the racial challenges that are happening in our countries. And they both, grandparents and Gen Z, both like 70s music. So those are both like things that.
All right.
So I would say when it comes to trust, I mean, they are the trans generation. So they're transgender, but they're also transracial. They're also trans-economical. They're trans-global. So there's some like transsexual. There's like some hard conversations, and there's some things to celebrate. So on some level, they're getting their information from their peers more than ever, and by targeted, there's a targeted advertising aspect to freedom of speech. So on some level, they're not going to trust authority because they're seeing just a curated stream of things that says authority is bad. And also, not just that, but a lot of the authorities in their lives, I mean, it's just been like one train wreck of a pastor after another train wreck of a pastor after another train wreck of a Christian leader. So those are hard things to trust. But yet at the same time, they trust their parents. So, and they trust us because we're in that position. But they're not going to trust us. And I think this is a kind of a great analogy. Imagine if you're going to go. So Jonathan, let's just do this. Let's say someone says, here's 20 grand to go on your dream vacation. And
can I come?
Yeah. So you can bring Tony. Yeah. So let's say you're going to bring Tony. And so what, and you have to go somewhere outside of the United States. So where would you go?
To be honest, I would go back home, Medellin, Colombia.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so let's say you like hop on this airplane, go back to Colombia, and you bring Tony with you. And as soon as the plane lands, Tony gets out and he just starts complaining about your country. He just says, "Oh man, it's just too hot here," or "I don't like the food," or "I'm allergic to this," or "I'm allergic to that," and all of a sudden, it's just like. You're like, I'm going on my dream vacation. I'm going back to my home. I love this place. I was excited to share this with Tony. And all he is doing is complaining about it. You just get back on the plane and go back. Go back, Tony.
Sorry.
Well, so that's the same thing that happens when a kid says, oh, like, check out my video on TikTok. And it's almost like the plane is landing in Gen Z, the island of Gen Z, or the country of Gen Z. And instead of being like, yeah, let me see what, like, who's following you? Like, what are you creating stuff around? What are your thoughts on this? Instead of having that posture of curiosity and interest, really being a missionary to their world. And instead of that, if we just be like, TikTok's stupid. People cuss too much on TikTok. This is a waste of your time. This is hypersexualized. And if we just start off with the position of just complaining,
Right.
then there's no way we're going to build trust.
Absolutely.
Just like Jonathan, if you land in Colombia, I'd be like, take me to your favorite places. Show me the best parts. Like, let's eat the best food. Let's do the most beautiful, that would be awesome. But that's the thing. So when it comes to building trust with Gen Z, got to enter in.
That's good.
To their country, even though they live in the same zip code or maybe the same square footage as we do, have to understand what their world is like.
Yeah. No, totally. And and so also what we just established from that, Jonathan, is that apparently David's a better friend than I am. If we both go on a vacation with you, apparently, because when a phrase that comes to mind when you just said we have to step into their world rather than criticizing or whatever. There's a leadership principle that we use at our church is wow before how. That when idea's pitched, is that we're gonna wow it before we how it.
That's good.
And I think that within student culture that we kind of should try to assume that posture as well, because it's everything around us. You can critique it quite easily and say that's stupid, that's lame, that's immature, that's whatever. And so, but have this posture of let me wow it and show interest in what interests them. And I think that's a piece of kind of even what I see that that Axis is trying to do, right? Where you guys try to help adults, caring adults, pastors, parents understand the wow factor behind what is student life and student culture, and doing so when students see that, I think that can really truly build that the parents and adults and pastors are making an interest, invested interest and opportunity. It desires to build trust within them. And so another thought that comes to mind, Dave, you can speak into this, is I've heard this phrase before, and I've always been fascinated by it. And it's, the world will listen to the one who tells the most compelling story. The world will listen to the one who tells the most compelling story. What compelling stories and sources has Gen Z's eyes and ears right now that kind of lends it towards what are they trusting?
Yeah, so these are fantastic questions. Here's how I like to think about that. When we talk about things that are just evil or bad all the time, like you saw me drop some bad stats there in my little kind of intro to Axis. And just saying, see how bad that is, 10.3 years old. See how bad that is, 11.4 years old. See how big that number is, 42 million. We have to be very cautious with those things, because that can be self-indulgent if we just talk about kind of the bad or what we're against without celebrating what's good. Mm-hmm. Now, hopefully you saw this tsunami of look, you may find the box, but you have what it takes to open the box. You don't have to be afraid of the box. The Holy Spirit can walk you through that, and you're going to be set. You're going to have one conversation that lasts a lifetime as a parent or a grandparent or a youth pastor. And that one conversation is going to be more powerful than the pocket rectangle that we have carrying around. So when we think about the greatest stories of all time are the redemptive stories. And so as a Christian, we get to see the world in a very compelling way. One, not that it's a neutral world. So whereas an agnostic might say, hey, we're just we're from nothing, we're going to nothing. No one really knows how we got here. We're just this speck, this pale blue dot that's kind of spinning around a ball of gas in the middle of nothingness, going thousands of miles an hour. And there's really no meaning to our lives. There's no meaning. We don't have an ultimate anchor to our identity. Our moral framework is something that's decided upon by the survival of the fittest, or the people who are the democracy that we've created. Sorry, I'm just kind of going off so that would be a very negative thing. Well, Christians can start off by saying, no, there's a loving God who's in relationship, who has created a very good world, a good, very good world. And part of that very good world is that we're supposed to cultivate and keep and uncover what he has hidden, and really be his representation in this world. Now, that's a very good starting point. Then the story goes that everything falls apart, becomes cursed, mankind's disobedience causes a separation between ourselves, each other, the created order, and our maker and our sustainer and God. So that's the fallen part. But then there's this whole redemptive story where we can redeem what's been lost. And the redemptive stories, always watch for this. In any great movie, there will be a death and a resurrection. And usually the death happens and then it has to rain. or someone gets baptized is what I'm trying to say. And then they resurrect. And we're always looking for resurrection stories because it gives us hope for our own resurrection story. Actually, you know what? Since we're just having a conversation, I'm doing this. Boom. This book, Country of Marriage, Wendell Berry. He's a guy who lives in Kentucky. Pretty interesting fellow. So a friend of mine gave me this book. It's not just about marriage, but and I think they wanted me to find this poem, but God led me to this poem. It's about this, it's hard to see. It's about this mad farmer. He's so angry. And there's a couple lines in here that just have really, really caught my attention and are like tattoo worthy lines. Okay. So that's how good they are. It says, let's see, where should I start? But just imagine like being around a farmer who's just angry. Because here he is, he's planting crops and he's looking at the world, and it's always about instant and pleasure, and instead of like a long commitment to the good life. But anyways, he says, praise ignorance for what man has not encountered, he has not destroyed. So you can tell that he's really upset in that line. And he says, ask the questions that have no answers, invest in the millennium, plant sequoias. Isn't that amazing? What does it look like to plant sequoias? What does it look like, Jonathan, for your 10-year-old baby girl to be a sequoia who is just, she's just made it out of the soil. She's on her way, but someday she will be a sequoia, one of the most noble and incredible trees. And then he keeps going through. He's throwing a lot of shade here, and he's pretty upset. But at the end, he's just talking about loving your wife. And then the very last line says, practice resurrection. Practice resurrection. And that idea has just caught me. It has caught me right in the heart, because I am drawn. There's a word there's like reconcile is a great word. Redeem is a great word. There's a lot of re words in scripture that are powerful, but the idea of something that is dead, that God resurrects. And so there's a lot of relationships I find myself in where someone will wrong me, or I will wrong them, and it'd just be easier to walk away. But can I say, is it possible for God to resurrect this relationship? Is it possible for God to resurrect these things? So if you're looking for a great story, the story of forgiveness, resurrection, redemption, that's a powerful one. Poetry, guys. How about that?
I love that. Hey, man, dropping those bars, man. No, there's such good stuff. And I think that like when we think about the word redemption, like even we talk about like where God redeemed, we fully believe that God is capable of redeeming everything, right? He redeemed the most horrific act in all of creation, all of history, Jesus on the cross, resurrecting. And if he can redeem that, we believe he can redeem every single circumstance, no matter how difficult, no matter how hard it is. And we see in our student cultures that they're dealing with a lot of problems. Like, man, they're dealing with a lot of stuff, and dealing with on the front lines of student ministry. I know that my heartbeat is I want to build trust with them as fast as I possibly can. But like, I also know that like I'm right on the cusp of being a millennial, millennial Gen Z. I kind of straddle that line for me personally. But like, so a lot of my friends are millennials, and a lot of my sphere of influence outside students. Is there a difference between building trust with millennials versus building trust with Gen Zers? Is there a difference between the two that we should identify?
I actually do not know the answer to that question. So I think it's interesting that you are in between. So that makes you a translator in many ways. I shared that in-betweener with you because I'm between Gen X and millennial on some level.
Okay.
I think what you said about Wow Before How, I think listening is so important. And I think listening is not an end in of itself. A lot of people say that right now. But just to be like, look, I want to know what you care about. I'm interested in your world. And whether you step up, Tony, and you're interested in a little bit older generation who are millennials, or dig down into what's into Gen Z and listening and understanding their world. What we get to do is we get to listen and understand the issues they're facing, some of the challenges, and show them how the gospel can resurrect what has been lost. But sometimes it's just kind of hanging out. And I remember I was with a kid, and I was, he was kind of going through this rites of passage man thing, and I was able to support their family in that. And it was so great because I wasn't the parent. So I'm not in charge of discipline. I'm not in charge of a lot of this stuff. So I just get to love this kid into a better place. Mm-hmm. And so my whole thing was just like, I just trying to figure out how God made you. What are you interested in? And like, are you getting the support from your school or from your church to pursue some of these dreams? And man, you start helping people, scratch the surface of like the things that God has built inside of them, uncover what the Creator has hidden inside of them. That's thrilling for me as a quasi mentor, but man, that just makes them feel so affirmed, because a lot of times I think it's more of this way. It's like, can you visioneer their future with them? Say, this is what I'm dreaming. This is what I'm seeing for you. This is what I'm seeing, how God made you. And that's what a blessing is. A blessing doesn't just call out the identity that they have, but it also says, this is the future that you could have. And that can be very powerful. But yeah, I don't know a big difference between, I know there is, I just don't know what it is. You got me. Great question.
No, and it's one of those things where I was even thinking about that myself. I was like, yeah, like, is there a difference? And I don't quite know, which I was like, oh, maybe there's some interesting stuff that can come out later on about that, because as we minister to each generation, like, there are, as you've identified, there are nuances, there are differences, that the way that we did in the 1950s is not the way we can do it right now, right? And so knowing that there are subtleties, and how can we be on the front lines, intentional enough to see what does Gen Z actually need. I know that for me, when I look at a lot of my students, I see a ton of insecurity. Like, I see that as just running rampant, like whether it's low self-esteem, whether it's having problems at the home, whether it's relationship issues, bullying, like you name it, it's going on, dealing with insecurity. Like, how does insecurity of a student play in their ability to trust an adult or a youth pastor or a youth minister or whatever? Like, how's insecurity play into that? And what can we do with insecurities?
Here's how to think of that. The first thing is to empathize with them. And so, I always think it's good to be like, all right, what did it feel like to be a 14-year-old dude back in the day? Like, where were you at 14? Where were you at 17? Remember all that testosterone? Remember some of the stupid stuff you might have done? So I think there's a good, start off with that empathy. And then where would we have been if we had smartphones back then?
Yep.
And, and with, the 15-year-old girls that we liked, or what you have access to. And I think that's, it's a big question, and it's a big thing to empathize with. And then as far as insecurity goes, there are different apps that actually incentivize some of the deadly sins, right? The 7 deadly sins. But Instagram is one of the most toxic things for someone's security. Yeah. Because you're only seeing it's not words, it's visual. There's filters on the images. You're only seeing the highlight reel, oftentimes only the best part of someone's life. And then you're seeing that best part of a lot of people's lives at once. I mean, even when I'm trying to sell my grill on Facebook right now, and I always just feel terrible when I'm done being on Facebook, because it's just like this, just like the visual assault of comparison over and over again. So let's go back to Instagram. It has because on some level, Instagram is a beautiful thing. But when you see the best parts of people's lives over and over and over again, and then let's get even more exciting, when you see their bodies, but not just their bodies, just parts of their bodies. So you see a curated best part of someone's legs, their knees, their eyebrows, their jawline, their waist, their boobs, their arms. All of a sudden, you are seeing just these chopped up pieces of beautiful people. And then all of a sudden, you're just like, well, my hips don't look like that. My muscles don't look like that. My beard doesn't look like that. So that just makes it tough. But there also is a culture of talking about shame, which gives us also the opportunity to validate and encourage and speak blessings over the identity of our students. I'll say, as a youth pastor, sarcasm is fun, but when I first started as this bivocational part-time, no one could say anything because they were instantly, it wasn't like, that's a stupid idea. It was like, you're stupid. So, or that's dumb, it's you're dumb. Or that smells bad, it's like, you smell bad. Everything was just like an attack on the identity of these students. And I was just like, we have to stop this, because there is like, we can't even have a baseline. Like, all of you are entering into this youth group at a deficit of confidence, a deficit of understanding who you are. And you just feel so insecure. So it's unbelievable just what kind of outlawing sarcasm for a while can do, and just making sure that you don't just affirm the good things that people do, even though it's kind of nice to affirm effort. I like to affirm effort. I like it when my effort's affirmed, but to affirm the image of God in them and who their identity is, to build up their security.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, and I think that you used the word a little bit ago, you used the word empathy, and of how can we try to bridge some of this gap of insecurity where we empathize with students. My wife was a social work major from Lancaster Bible College. We both graduated from Lancaster Bible College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And one of the coolest definitions I ever heard of empathy came out of one of her social work classes. And empathy from this professor said, empathy is the ability to abandon your world and to step into the world of the person across from you. And what I love so much about that is that, like, we love our world. Like, we are very, like, we can't go further than 6 inches in front of our face usually. And we're very tunnel visioned. And if we can abandon our world, strip off what we have and say, I'm going to literally step into your world, your perspective, your eyes, your shoes, your scene, and that's where an empathetic heart, a compassionate heart can come from, I can see. And so for me, that's been something that's really stuck heavily with me. And I can concur that thought of, like, man, like, empathy is so deeply needed as we interact with Gen Z. Another concept that comes to mind for me, like, is we live in such a hyper-driven world. We live in a world that's built off of change after change after change, inconsistency after inconsistency after inconsistency. Students, Gen Z, they need people who are present in their life. David, why would you say that, like, modeling presence is so important in a world that is so inconsistent at times?
I read this great article, and it said, you never determine when you are being present. The people around you determine that.
Wow, so that's good.
That's good.
That's like a first start.
Hold on. Rewind that. Bring that back. Bring that back real quick.
So I could say to my 8-year-old daughter that I'm being present right now. I am being here. I am with you. And it doesn't count unless she agrees. It's the people. Wow. It's the other people. And so, and do you want to be the dad or the youth pastor? Sorry, I got to put my hand. Who's always doing this? Always like, just gotta look at my phone. Gotta look at my phone. So yeah, I would say that's something that I think about every now and then. I'm always kind of playing in that space personally, because sometimes, perfect moderation is the key. But if you can't have perfect moderation, sometimes you have to have total abstinence. And so for me, that means I don't have Chrome or Safari on, or any browser on my phone. And that's extreme. And I think I'm very unusual for doing that. And it's because like, I just always want to read something. I'm like, I wonder where that ingredient came from. Or I'll go figure out this recipe. Or, is there a new place in town, that just opened up? There's a new store. I'll go check that out. Or, what if I went on a trip to this part of the country? Or, what? I wonder if anybody sent me an email. Or, so where I literally can't look at my email on my phone. And that's because I have a problem and I'm not good at being present with people. And so for me, I was trying to choose something that's way more important, which is my family, my friends, and et cetera. And I'll tell you something that's great, because the phone wants our attention. It's an attention economy, and it's designed for that. And, we just have to know that. And sometimes it's hard to overcome it. But I would encourage, or just try this out. Be your own guinea pig, Tony and Jonathan. Next time you're going to a good friend's house for dinner or for a meal, and it's going to be like a couple hours, but you're not going to be gone forever. Leave your phone at home. Go to their
snap. Snap.
And just try it. And it's like it feels weird, but then sometimes it can feel really good. Or if you can't do that, just leave it in the car. So
that's more doable. That's more doable.
Leave in the car. And we've got little kids, so if your little kids aren't with you, then sometimes it's like, maybe I should do that. But and for like dad advice, there was a friend of mine who's a counselor. He was just like, hey, give me some advice. He's like, just try. He's like, just try to spend 15 minutes every now and then with your kid doing something they love doing non-judgmentally. So that'd be like, hey, I just want to understand Fortnite. And I just want to enjoy it. What's good about it? Like, what do you love about this? Tell me what's funny about this. What's interesting? And just be like, you can do this with a 2-year-old, right? My kids are like playing Hungry Hippos, right? It's like, can you sit in that moment and be present? And especially if someone's going through something hard, can you sit in it and just listen, sit in the puddle and not offer advice? Trust that God can lead that person to a solution, can lead them in wisdom. And sometimes they don't need to hear from you. You're not the voice of the Holy Spirit in that situation. So you're just best to keep your mouth shut and just be there. So those are things that have worked. But I'm trying.
That's good.
Yeah, but how often do we think we're the voice of the Holy Spirit in our students' lives, in our kids' lives, and we think, man, we are God's gift to this person in this moment with what I have to say. When so often it's literally just shut up and be present, like give a listening ear, just like you said, show interest and celebrate what's good. And they're like something as simple as Fortnite. I can promise you that I know that could make a significant impact on us, kids' life, a student's life. You just sit with them and ask them about that kind of stuff. And like, man, like even if I okay, so like I'm interacting with students. I'm trying to gain their trust. I'm modeling presence. I'm asking good questions. I'm appreciating what I'm like them and what I see, their talents or whatever. But then I starting closer with this person, and I noticed that, man, they have some unhealthy sources of where they gain their trust or where they put their trust in, whether that's a certain app, whether that's a certain relationship. Just something has their ear that I can see may not be the most healthy or the most godly. How do I challenge that? How do I challenge them well without Bible thumping them? Or like, how do you challenge that well without, again, trying to like be a jerk about it?
Yeah. All right. I guess the first question is, are you personally leading an exam in life? And would they be able to say, where they can see you pursuing your own growth? I mean, you can only change yourself, right? You can't change other people. God can change other people and work through them. I think that is a very tough question that you ask, because sometimes it is so clear how toxic things are. And you can just see them start to implode. So at Access, we like to ask questions, and sometimes it's just, you have to trust the Holy Spirit to guide you and to be wise in different situations. I love the proverb that says, "Answer a fool according to his folly," and then right after that it says, "Don't answer a fool according to his folly." So sometimes you need to show the mirror and just say, "Look, you're being a fool," and other times it's just like, "No, I'm going to live a wise life," and be in that process. Okay, so what we like to do is start off by saying, what is good about this? Then what is missing? Then what is confused? Then what does Scripture say? And so sometimes that's a good path forward. Sometimes celebrating what's awesome about something can be very important, as opposed to nagging on it, because then you can start saying, look at how awesome that is. But man, this is this is manifesting itself in a toxic way over here. Is that really what Instagram is supposed to do? Is it really supposed to crumble the mental health, your mental health? How is that making you? Sorry, I'm kind of attacking Instagram right now. And honestly, so there's an artist named Tame Impala, and I listen to his albums when I'm in the airport a lot of times. I don't know, it's kind of like I think they would call it like new psychedelic music. So I'm not saying he's a good person, okay? But sometimes it's just got that kind of rolling kind of groove to it that I enjoy. But he has a line, and one of his songs that won't let me go, and his line is, "Maybe fake is what I like." And so there'll be times where Lindsey, my wife, says, "Maybe fake is what you like." And I'm like, oh, because really we'll see something and it's like, oh, you enjoy having these followers, or you enjoy, posting or looking at this, but really that's what you really like is you really want intimacy. The APA says Gen Z is the most connected generation of all time and the most disconnected at the same time. They have another word for it, but I forgot what it is. But anyways, it's like, hey, you're connected via technology, but you're lacking the intimacy that you need. And so all the time is like, we're just watching our friends eat these empty calories when it's like, what you really want is nutrition. And you are just starving yourself. And it's the idea of, man, maybe fake is what you like. So sometimes the best way to do that is to introduce them into a new path, a new type of food to eat, a new hey, you're like going after this. Well, what if we all had dinner tonight, had a tech-free dinner, and just got to know each other better on that level and built into that relationship.
That's awesome. Tony, if I can mention one thing, as we're talking here, I'm reminded of I have a lot of young people who sometimes would want to play music, right? Hey, can I put my song on? And it's always tricky, you got to be careful. I mean, you have X amount of other kids, your other leaders are there, different personalities. And so one of the things that I've learned throughout the years is I'll listen. I got you. I'll listen. And I'm hearing, and I'm obviously not agreeing with some of the content or the words, but then I try to grab and say, listen, the instrumental, dope, awesome, on point. The production aspect of it, incredible. They are doing their thing. The part where they're telling me to pop a perk, not cool. Think about it. Not cool. The part where they're telling me to do this and that, that's not cool. Imagine someone treating your mom or your little sister like that. You hear what I'm saying? So, and then I introduce something as an alternative, something that sounds pretty dope, or just something that does not have that demeaning and that dark, thing that so affects each and every one of us, especially a young person. So I love to listen and enter into their world and then point out the awesomeness, but then also just point out like, bro, that's whack. That's gonna send me to jail. I'm gonna get locked up. I'm gonna lose everything that I've worked so hard to get. I'm gonna get knocked off the mountain. And do you hear what I'm saying?
For sure.
Oh yeah, that's so good. And it's easy to see something that's, there's this big emphasis on the anti-hero. And it's an interesting story to see the story of an anti-hero, but we don't see the full picture. And true biblical goodness is amazing and it's life-giving. Sure, it's hard sometimes, but you hear these songs, you see these movies that only show the high without the hangover. And I was like, you guys remember the band the Cranberries? You may not use, but anyways, they have this song called Zombie. It was older. Anyways, I just heard it. We were listening to some 80s music the other day and 90s music. And I was like, I wonder what happened to them. And I was like, okay, I'll Google it. Oh, the lead singer drowned in a bathtub, drunk. Oh. And it's just like, oh, that's so sad. But that's for some reason, they had success. And then all of a sudden she just is alone with a bottle of pills and an empty bottle of vodka, just floating face down in a bathtub. And that's the part you don't. And so then your heart breaks for that because you see that this is something that is totally off the rails. But in the song, it just sounds like, well, I kind of want to try a Percocet. Kind of want to know what that's like. It sounds really great. Yeah, I love Jonathan. What you did there was like translation, man. You did culture translation as you entered in, understood, appreciated, and then pointed out some things that are confused.
That's right.
Good stuff.
No, it's so good. And Dave, what would you kind of say, like, is, even to some parents who are just in some needs of like words of encouragement, man, like of how can I do, I'm tired. I want to do this right. I don't know if I have the energy, losing battle after losing battle, or like what kind of words of encouragement would you give to them?
Yeah, I would say, don't give up. You have what it takes. There is no one more influential than you. There is no one who's going to fight for your child's heart more than you are. Your kid could be the next president of the United States, or they could be in prison, and you are going to be there with them. You're going to be praying for them. You're going to be advocating for them. And there are going to be a lot of amazing other caring adults that come and go in your kid's life. Youth pastor is going to be one of them, maybe an awesome coach here or there, a really good teacher, or a grandparent, or et cetera. But you are the parent in their life, and God has called you to disciple them. You can't control the outcomes. They are God's kid. They're not your kid, but you get to steward and encourage and shape that. So, and when you come across things that make you feel like you want to retreat and be silent or be violent, reach out to your church, reach out to your community, reach out to your youth pastor, reach out to Access, and keep living into that one conversation that lasts a lifetime.
Yep.
That was so good. Listen, David, Tony, thank you guys so much. I mean, for taking time. Thank you for having this conversation. Again, this is Let's Talk Youth. We've been, this has been such an awesome series. I wish we had more time, and maybe we can do a part 2. What do you think, David? You down to do a part 2 at some point?
I'm always open. Always open.
Excellent. I could totally see, Tony, I'm just speaking out loud. I could totally see us doing like a conference out here by the Jersey Shore and having David come out and get as many youth leaders, parents, and fill up some of the space that we have here that we're blessed with at the Ocean City Tabernacle. So listen, if you logged on, thank you so much. You guys were so consistent with those who were logged on all the way through. We'll be back with more. If you're catching the replay, do me a favor and share. I need you to jump on the mission with me. You know how it works. Y'all already know what we need to do. Like, comment, and share. And let's get this thing out there. If you absolutely miss everything, we do have a YouTube channel that you're able to catch the replay on, where you can take your time and really capture the nuggets. I mean, a lot of wisdom was just shared. So I encourage you guys to catch the replay. Again, thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.